everyone. Thank you for joining us here for another episode of OK Copy. Today we are joined by Chance Bassett, executive agency producer. Chance, thank you for joining us. I'm not going to spill too much. I'm going to let you tell everyone about yourself and how you got here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I feel really happy to be sitting across from you because I have such respect for you.
Thank you.
And, lady producers talking and sharing advice is something we definitely need to do always.
For sure.
So I have been an agency producer for about 20 years. I actually grew up in a production family. I kind of have a little bit of an abnormal upbringing. Mm-hmm. My father was a documentary filmmaker. Before that, he worked at NBC for 20 years as a production manager, and my mom was a PA there.
Nice.
So kind of it's a little bit in my DNA, it's a little bit in my genes. And then when we were kids, I'm one of 4 kids that grew up in New York City. And when we were kids, we were kid actors. So I kind of grew up around production in a lot of different ways. Mm-hmm. I grew up in front of the camera, going on auditions after school every day. And then we booked something, my mother would take all 4 of us kids instead of just taking my sister to shoot her movie or a TV show, and we'd all go. And then we'd sit in the audience while things were being taped. We'd go on location. Me and my brother would just be dropped into school wherever we were shooting. So I grew up in production, in front of it, loving that part of it, the actor part, and then sort of also doing the other side of it, the ensemble part, all the things that go into it from behind the scenes. I also went to LaGuardia, the High School of Performing Arts,
nice.
And I was a drama major and did drama for 4 hours a day.
Okay.
And what that really taught me is my love of ensemble. And kind of when you first see source material, first see a script, a play, sitting around a table reading it, and then cut to opening night on stage, and just kind of how to get there and all the people and parts, and you're bigger when you're together as a group. And that's really the part of drama and acting that I took away, of liking and wanting to have a career that was able to, have that in my life. Mm-hmm. Be around people that were smarter than me and knew things that I didn't know and could teach me. And that's the best part of production for me. Mm-hmm. I did not know that agency producer existed. I didn't know that role existed at all. Okay. I got out of school. I was an English major, went to Cornell, and I was a communications major with an English minor, so, kind of could have done anything, but, always wanted to do production. Didn't really know exactly what production. There's so many different types of producers, right? Mm-hmm. There's post-producers, the effects producers, there's producers that are, planning it before you even get. There's all different things, and I guess it makes sense that there's a producer at an advertising agency, but I didn't really know about how an advertising agency worked.
Okay.
So I totally fell into it. I had a friend that I knew from high school, and I saw her in the street, and she was an account person at an advertising agency, one of the big ones. Told me what she does. And, when you hear about an account person from someone else, you're like, well, that kind of sounds like a producer in a way, because you're working with your clients, thinking about the strategy, figuring everything out, working with the budget,
Keeping the train on time.
Yeah. And so I started doing that. I started as an account person just because it was a good entry into agency life.
Okay.
And to see how agencies worked. And I did that for about 5 years. And I, always wanted to go back into the production side of it. I always loved when we were shooting something, mm-hmm. when a script got sold, and it was kind of okay, how are we going to do this? How are we going to make this car flip, or this, monster fly, or whatever we're doing. And so and production is a coveted job, mm-hmm. being a producer is a coveted job. And it's always you're in some place in the company, but you want to be in another place in the company, which isn't always the easiest move, but I took a chance, and I, went to HR, and I said, I don't want to be an account person anymore. Please don't promote me to an account supervisor as you're about to. I'd rather be an assistant producer. And so they said, hang tight. And when an assistant producer job came up, I took it, and I took a $30,000 pay cut.
Wow.
from, an account person to an assistant producer. This is a long time ago because I've been doing for 20 years. And I just knew I did the right thing because every day coming to work was fun and exciting and interesting.
Something new.
Yeah, and I was still in the agency world and, had relationships with clients and all that, but I was still part of creating something every day. And to me, that is such a great thing about our jobs is that every day is different. Yes. And every day you are using your brain to create something and working with other creative people and hiring them and giving them jobs and giving them, because the talent that we're exposed to, the actors, the directors, I mean, these are some very talented people. And I just think the access we have, to bring in these people to tell our stories,
right.
Our brand stories or, whatever message we're trying to contribute is just such a pleasure. And it's just like, I'm sitting across from some people these times and I'm like, oh my God, this is a very famous director, but he or she is so into this, little 30-second spot and they're bringing the story out of our spot, So then and then the thing about me is I have always stayed at agencies that I've been at for a long time because I think there's always something you can learn from each project. I think it's hard as a producer to kind of get stagnant. Just because of that, we're talking about like every project is different. Yeah. And everything is different.
It's always a new challenge or puzzle that you have to put together.
It is. So I was an assistant producer. I did back then we did animatics and drawings and little things. And then, your next step is they kind of give you some, edits that have already been shot that you need to kind of get the post-production figured out for that. So it's kind of like not so scary to send a junior producer out to shoot like a big job and be the only producer on set. And then I shadowed a great executive producer at the time I was at Y&R, and he was really respected by the crew and by the director, and that was something that I really admired. That when that executive producer walked on set, he was a creative and he was a partner in the production process, and that kind of always made me want to be the same type of producer. And then, I stayed at agencies for 8 years, for 6 years. I think there's always an opportunity if, you're kind of liked and you can deliver, you'll always get kind of jobs that challenge you.
Yeah.
And, the nice thing too about our jobs is sometimes, we're on something for 3 months or 6 months. And then by the time you kind of get like, okay, I'm ready to do something else, you get another project.
Yes.
That gets out the door.
So you were at McGarry Bowen, which is now Dentsu.
Yes, I started a very small agency. Okay. I started a 50-person agency when I was an account person.
Okay, and that's not small. I mean,
well, yeah,
in the grand scheme, compared to then.
So I worked at an agency that doesn't exist anymore. It's called Hampton Rayboy. Okay. And we did a lot of. We did some diet ads before and after. I did a program with Howard Stern.
Nice.
Yes. Twin Lab was our client, so there's a lot of vitamins, some trade stuff we did. So that's where I started. I was there for 5 years, and then I went to Wonderman, and I worked in direct, and that was also a very interesting segment to learn about because I did a lot of again, I was still an account person and we did a lot of loyalty programs. I worked on Toys R Us at the time. We had newsletters, starting to track data on messages and what offers would resonate with certain people, which is kind of like the segue into, what you're watching.
You need to create.
Yeah, what you, and kind of the messages that you need to bring out. So I was at Wonderman, and then we won Microsoft, and that was a very big win at Wonderman. And we built a 40-person team or something, but I was the third account person on it. And then while I was doing that, I was just I really miss production. I doing email blasts and trade shows and direct, but I wanted to be on sets. I wanted to be, that was my love of it. I think any job you do, you're going to learn from, and I learned from that. But I was and that's, when I took my pay cut and became, I went over to the Y&R side. Okay. And then I worked on Pepperidge Farm. Nice. Yeah, which was really great, a really great account. They're a really great company to work with. And And then after Y&R, I went over to McGarry Bowen, which is now Dentsu. And McGarry Bowen was very small when I got there. But there were like 5 producers. And I worked on Crayola. So I got a lot of that, how to film with babies and kids and, having 6 different babies waiting in the wing in case 5 other have meltdowns. But that was a really lovely account, toys and all that. And then after I left, when I left McGarry Bowen, we won Verizon when I was at McGarry Bowen, and that, it's a very big account to win for 5 producers.
Oh, yeah.
So that was a really interesting launch. We launched the Droid brand.
Nice.
Yeah, so like we made that mnemonic, and it was a long time ago, so you didn't have graphics on phones, and we had, that was the new technology. Like you'd open the phone and we wanted it to say Droid and have like an animation, and you'd have to figure out like how can you program these phones to have that. Like that, it sounds crazy now.
Yeah.
But that was something back then.
How did you do that? How did you get that to work?
Just talking to the right people.
Yeah.
It was a lot of collaboration
with the Verizon team.
And because it was a phone launch, so we would talk to the engineers of the phones.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Pass files off, see what worked, see what the lag was. Rework the animation because it was rudimentary, because you didn't want to have like, the phone opening up for like a minute. You wanted it to like do it and open up. So, like a lot of exploratory. And that was just a really amazing experience because that was a big brand. That we went against like Apple and iPhone and all that stuff. And just to see like, to make a sound that was like on everybody's phone, I got a little too much to hear that sound over and over again. But, just to have something that impacts, it's just like
transformative.
It just, but that is something about advertising that I really do love is that, the creatives are some of the smartest people in the room. They're geniuses, and you can make work that is not just about like selling a product that really does transform things. Or you can make a project that shows the technology in a different way that no one's ever used it before, and then that can kind of spark another project down the line, like a for good project, and a lot of stuff we do in advertising is like for good, like we try to take on pro bono work when we can. I think that's very important for agencies to do. I think it's really important for agencies to mentor, to have students in the building, to just tell them about what we do, because as I said when we started, like I didn't even know advertising producer existed.
I had no clue for a really long time. But even for people that still don't really know what an advertising agency producer does, can you break down a little bit of the process, like where you come in with the creative and strategy teams and how you act as like the quarterback, kind of cornerstone to getting them to that kind of final launch, that piece actually being done, because it is different from a line producer. A lot of conversations and people I speak with, there's just still some confusion around the difference between the two roles. So help us dissect that a little bit.
Yeah. I have the best job in the whole process. So let's just start there. I'm a total nerd, but I love it. Then this is part of why I love it, because you're sitting at your desk or you're at home or, whatever, and then you get a board. Or, you say you get a script or whatever project it is. And the account team, the creative team comes to you after they've been working months and months and presenting work to the client, making sure it's on strategy and it's just words on paper, and they give it to me and they say, okay, how do we make this? And so scripts, words on paper, maybe one keyframe. And so I just take that board and I start to dissect it. I start to look at it and I try to break it down. And I break it down in a way to kind of figure out what type of partners I need to bring in, right? So if it's a visual storytelling board or, it's a comedy dialogue board. And I kind of figure out like what is, and I talk to my creatives and I say, what are you going for here? Like, tell me, what's the vibe? What do you want people to feel after they see this? And that's a very big question to me, because I want to know, like, when I'm looking at reels, like what feeling I want to feel from those artists. So I break it down. I figure out, I always do a ballpark right from the board to figure out how much money I need. And the way that I do that would be how many different setups, how many days do we need, how big is the art department, where do I need to shoot it? Does people need to speak English? Do people need to, be of a certain ethnic background that I need to go film someplace where I can find that? The weather is always a big deal. Like, we can't shoot in New York, but we can shoot in LA because, it's going to be snowing at this time. Right. Or is it a good candidate to take it to an abroad shoot? And you kind of just, and this becomes second nature after a while, but you look at this piece of paper and you kind of like pull all this information out of it. And then I put together a ballpark so that when I start calling directors and I start calling production companies, I feel confident of knowing how the money's going to break down. Because I don't want to be told that my money can't work, because I want to show them how my money can work. Right. Or I want to suggest something to my team that we could maybe make a tweak on and then make the budget work. Right. So I really am a producer that likes to get in the weeds. I like to get dirty. I like to know exactly what's happening. I like to, chat with the director a lot. And then I just look at reels. I look at a lot of director reels.
Are you always watching reels, like even when you're not on a job, not live?
I am mostly if something like amazing like crosses your desk, because we're usually super busy in the weeds of our job. But yeah, I try to keep up with the trades. I think that's very important to see what work is out there new. I also ask a lot of my rep friends and production friends, like who's exciting you right now, because they have a different, glance in the overall market other than just like what I'm doing at that particular time. Also too, you really do need to consume a lot of media to be able to have, those type of things you can pull from the back of your head. Like someone the other day was telling me about a kind of a technique they wanted to use. And I was able to pull a spot from like 10 years ago that used that technique, just because you're like, okay, I've seen this, so I can is this in the right realm of what you want to go to, just like expand on this.
You always kind of need a visual reference to connect.
I think
Make sure you're on the same page before you kind of go out and find the person to do it.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I see boards and maybe you think it would be easy, but I'd be like, so is this supposed to be funny or serious? Like, you know what I mean? Because you're like, it could be both. Like, this is serious, but this bit's funny. But like, so what do you have to figure out like who the right director is for that. So I then look at I could look at 50 reels, I could look at 100 reels. I mean, it really depends. I look at so many. And then, I make my short list of who I think would be good. I am a little bit stubborn. Like, I'll never pass along a reel that I don't think is great to my creatives, just because, you're on a job for a couple months and you want to be excited about it. And I always feel like my goal is to make the best possible version that could ever exist of this script. Right. Because everybody's going to do it differently. Yeah. If you bid 3 different directors, they're going to do it 3 different ways. And I think that's kind of the fun part too. When you reach out to directors, or, and a lot of it's logistics. A lot of it's like, well, I have a one shoot day and it's in this, it needs to be abroad. Can they do it? Because they have another job that they're looking at, or they're bidding on a job that's like 5 shoot days and they're more, invested in that. And so a lot of it's just like logistics, right, of who can fit and where. Right. And then once you find your 3 directors, based on who the creative's liking, you have a call with them and you kind of walk through the script. You have your creatives walk through the script with them. And then that's a really chemistry call. It's kind of like almost like a first date in a way, right? You wanted to see what people are like and kind of like what they're bringing to the table. And after that call, we let them go off and spend a week writing a treatment. And treatments, they could be 10 pages, but lately they seem to be more like 45 pages. And there are these multimedia presentations. And I mean, not to age myself, but when I started, you get sort of printouts of the treatments bound and sent to you at the agency, and then you'd walk around and you pass them to, the creatives. And
how you printed it was very important.
And how you printed
the type
it,
of paper, how it was binded.
Yes, because it needs to feel premium. I mean, we're in marketing and advertising. Everything's about like how it feels.
Yes,
and
I remember those days.
And now, I mean, there's movie reference, there's camera lenses reference, there's camera move references, there's, I mean, I'm always blown away.
What is the perfect, it's hard to say perfect, but what's an ideal treatment package look like for you? Like, what are the must-haves that directors should always keep in mind when they're submitting?
I think it's important for a director to be able to kind of explain what we're trying to do in the commercial in terms of words on paper, like what our words are. But I also think it's important that they add something to it, that they see it, they explain to us in the treatment sort of the same idea, but how they see it in a different way. And that's why we're hiring directors, right? That's why we're not shooting it ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to plus it. We're trying to bring those team members in, directors, production designers, wardrobe stylists that can do it better than us, that can tell our story, that they can see what we're trying to say, but they can expand upon it, and bring a different craft to it. So I think that's important. And I think that a lot of times when we go with one director versus the other, that's sort of something that is a driving factor. Like, you understand what we're trying to do, but then you're also coming with fresh ideas.
Right.
And then we try to do follow-up calls and walk through different things. I always feel bad when I'm not able to work to everybody that bid, because it's so much work and it's so much money and time. And
it's a lot that goes into it.
It's a lot that goes into it.
And then it's emotional too, because you're coming up with this idea. You're spending a week, maybe 2 weeks. No, we never have 2 weeks. So you're spending about a week to develop the treatment. I think some of the other things too is like just making it very 101. I think for some directors, especially emerging directors, is like framing references, right? Like lighting references,
casting references.
Yeah. Like, it really does need to be a full creative brief and it's a treatment, but a true creative brief that's thinking about as many pieces of the puzzle as possible, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then the next step of explaining to us,
and selling it.
Yeah, and because then we're going to turn around and we have to explain it to our clients.
Right.
So that's another thing that sometimes makes us go with one person versus the other, that they can't really talk through their vision, as succinctly as we need them to, or they just kind of maybe had too many ideas. I've seen things and I'm like, this is now like a 2-minute commercial, which I appreciate, but also like, you have to recognize what you can do within the medium that you have.
Right. So it's the chemistry in the beginning. It's how you can articulate it and put it on paper, right? But then also the sell. So there are some kind of soft skills and ability to sell and be confident in your creative and what you're bringing to the table.
Right.
That plays just as much of a factor as what's on paper in the treatment.
Yeah. And their enthusiasm for the project. That's always the big thing. You can tell if somebody's like excited or not. If they have another project that they're bidding, they if they would rather do this one, that's always like a good sign. So, and it's this date, and then you kind of just like almost move in with somebody for a few months, right? And then you don't really, then you have like back and forth the director, but usually you're not seeing your director like in person until you like walk into callbacks,
right?
And then that's like the week or the 2 weeks that you're going to be together on set and shooting things.
Leading up to it.
Yeah.
So some of the pre-production as well, and then getting onto set, right?
Yeah.
How important do you see the production company's role? I think there's been a lot of conversation, especially coming out of Cannes this year, around production companies feeling like maybe everyone doesn't value the ecosystem that they build around the directors.
I mean, I have nothing but respect for production companies. Yeah. I mean, they're to me is just like, you need this? Okay, sure. You need this? Okay, great. Like you need this built? It's fine.
As well, right?
You need a plain fuselage to be, brought into I mean, this is from a job I did, brought into Barcelona so we could build a plane. Sure. Like, and I'm just like, how does everybody know all this?
Right.
You know? Yeah, I think production companies are extremely valuable. I mean, you know, obviously the director is extremely valuable, but the production company is managing the director, you know? So they need to be able to do that well.
Right.
And I think the reputation of the production company, the history you have with them in other projects is really important. If I haven't worked with a production company, I do try to do my due diligence and reach out to other agency producers who have. Same thing that I do. I always tell a production company that does right by me, please let me be your recommendation for a job that you know might want to go up against, or if somebody has any questions about working with this particular director, like I'm happy to do that, because I just feel like if someone does right by you, you should do right by them.
For sure.
I think production companies are extremely important because at the end of the day, like the buck stops with you guys.
Right.
Like, you know, the production companies, you know, it doesn't, I mean, a director could be, you know, angry or whatever, or like wants to cast somebody else we can't cast, but it's really the production company that is then able to manage the director to talk about like the other sides of what was happening. So I am always like in cahoots with the production company. Like,
does that play a role in your decision making too, when you're considering directors, or even where you're going to look for reels of directors?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's companies I trust and I've worked with a lot. So yes, but I don't want to say that would mean me not working with someone I haven't worked with before, because that's super important too. The freshness. And a lot of times too, because it's such a small industry and it's a big industry, but there's such, you know, when you work in New York for 20 years, somehow you know somebody
that knows someone.
Yeah, so you're going to probably know someone that's at the production company that you can trust, you know. You just want to know if something goes wrong, that the production company is going to have your back and be there and not be like, well, this isn't what we signed up for, because once you're in it,
overages.
Yeah. And I think that that's a really important part of being a producer too, is to know your budgets. So when you have them, to know like, okay, like I might have an overage here, but like I didn't end up like needing a third location. So then I have that like $10,000 saving that I can maybe like reallocate to that. And I think if you have a good relationship with production companies, even though it's like an add-on, you can just be like, well, you're not spending this money, so can we split it, or can we use this or reallocate it? And you know, I think most people will do that, because I don't think they're trying to like steal from anybody. I think they just want to have enough money to make everything look good on screen.
Right. I love that. And so for producers that are up and coming, I know we talked earlier prior to recording about the junior producers that you've had the opportunity to work with and to bring up. Like, what are some things that, I don't want to say that you expect of them, but that you can try to encourage them to do coming into the industry, running projects, engaging with directors and producers? What are some, and even just advice for any producers that are listening?
I think it's important to find a mentor. I think it's important to walk the halls, you know, where you're working, which is hard with a lot of people working remotely these days. So I think that that's a hard thing. But, you know, there are some days that people are going back to the agency. I think you have to look to people that have been doing it longer and go up to them and say, listen, I'd love for you to be able to help me if I have a question, or how would you do this? And I think that that's extremely important, because none of us in producing knows how to do every single thing. And that's the best part of our job, is that every single day we're learning, every single job is different. And you have to live in the producer in this space where you're like, I might not know how to do this exact thing, but I'm confident that I'm going to do it the best way it can be done, because I'm going to do the research and find that out. And that's not something that every person can feel comfortable in, you know what I mean? Right. So I think that's something I always explain to some junior producers. I personally have, it's very important to me to train the juniors, just because you know, as the years went by, I was like, there's no mentors anymore, because a lot of people get laid off once they make a certain amount of money. And then that's a really disservice to the juniors, because there's nobody there that's an expert. So I've actually authored a few seminars about like production, and it kind of breaks down the different processes. Like there's a 10-week seminar that I've brought to a few different agencies that I worked at.
Nice.
I did it at McCann, and then I did it at BBDO. And all the EPs or the senior producers would kind of take a section and teach it. Nice. And we'd have the juniors come in. And even that was great because then they're just getting more familiar with certain terms. And then they can find somebody that they like, how they explain somebody as a, a more senior person, they can come talk to them. So I think that's very important. I think, like I said before, just consuming media, having a point of view about what the work could look like, should be like, having a point of view about the director, coming to a project excited.
Yes.
I think that's something very important. Creatives and account people, they're working on this project before you're involved for months and months. The strategist is working on it. They're coming with a strategy. They're briefing the creatives. The account team's working on it. And by the time they get to you, they're exhausted.
Yeah.
They've been,
energy.
And so you have to be, I like to be a little bit of a cheerleader. Like, this is great. We're going to do this. We're going to figure it out. And I like to kind of take any of the stress that they've had up to that point and how we're going to do this off of them and say, now that's my stress. You wrote the idea, you explain how you want it to be, but like how we get it done, like let me do this and not, ask me questions, but let me take this off you.
Right.
So I think it's, for producers, you're a little bit of everything, right? You're a little bit of, you're a little bit of a teacher, you're a little bit of a disciplinarian, you're a little bit of a cheerleader, you're a little bit of all that. So I think those qualities are important. I think junior producers staying in touch with people that they've worked with and respect is really important. I think reading the trades, knowing the work that's being done, so that, they can bring new directors and new techniques to the creatives that they might not know about. Staying current is very important.
Yep.
And I just think being in the room. Anytime you can be in the room, you're going to learn something.
Right. Even if it's just to listen and consume.
Yeah. I would always, when I had a fun project and I was briefing directors, I'd walk the halls and say, we're briefing, this amazing A-level director. Does anybody want to come sit in on the call?
Yes.
Just to be like how I run it, how the creatives talk about it, how the director adds to it. Just sit here quietly, you learn something from it. So that when you run your own, briefing with an A-level director, you feel comfortable, knowing what to say and what not to say. So
that's great.
Yeah, I just like that because I think the team part is so cool. And also, like, I feel really bad for, like, baby junior producers who are on set and don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Because it's really scary.
Lost. It is. And there's a lot happening. You don't know where to insert yourself. It can be very intimidating.
And you're the leader of, like, what happens.
Yeah.
Like, the last thing comes to the producer and, like, how do you want to move forward here? Like, do you want to go into another hour of OT? Do you want to test that we can get the shot, before the sun goes down? Like, if we cut out this shot, does the story still make sense? These are decisions that are so important to the final product.
Yeah.
That the producer, has to take in all the information from the line producer, from, everybody, and kind of make a recommendation, and for somebody that hasn't been doing this or it's their first time on set or anything, that can be really scary.
Yeah, it can be really intimidating. It's so interesting because I feel like I experienced that being the owner on set. It was almost like my first time on set again. Obviously, I understood the logistics and everything that was going on.
Yeah.
But it took me a minute to find my place.
Right.
Because
it was a different role.
It was a different role.
Yeah.
It was no longer in the weeds. I don't want to micromanage my team. I'm kind of just there, to entertain the client, essentially.
Yeah.
Make sure the director feels good. Everyone feels confident.
You're there also if something goes wrong. So if it's a little bit boring, it's good because it means it didn't go wrong.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, if I can step away and take some calls, it's a good thing.
Yeah,
everyone's doing with their...
A boring shoot is the best shoot. Because,
yes, but I remember my first boring shoot and I was like itching. I would just keep going out and walking, just trying to find something to do. But it was very reminiscent of those first times on set and being kind of unsure of like where to insert yourself, and that came to mind when you said that.
It's interesting because we're in this like society where everything's like fast, 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 go, go, go. But like the craft of filming something is not a go, go, go. Like it's like you're breaking it down, you're setting it up, you're changing the lens. I mean,
it's a lot of downtime.
There's a lot of downtime, but there's still things happening that we're just not doing, like the crew's doing. And so that sometimes can be frustrating to a client who might not understand that. You're like, no, it's all like they're moving the things. And
well, that's also what the role becomes, whether it's as an agency producer or it's as the EP or whomever, that becomes a big part of your role, is keeping the client in the know, right? What to expect and how long things are going to take. If you have an amazing AD, even better. I've had the opportunity to work with some great ADs that are very client savvy. Some directors, one of our directors is very client savvy. I didn't have to say anything. I was like, okay, well, I'm just going to go take some calls then. Yeah. So you've got this locked down. But that does become essential to ensure that the clients are feeling good, in the know. They know when they can step away and schedule their calls and things like that as well, which I think is a part of your role, maybe accounts, right? Account management, account supervision.
Yeah, I always try to like the first like 10 minutes of the client coming on set, I try to like have a 10-minute like okay, I want to go through the schedule with you. Yeah. I want to tell you like why we're doing it this way. If you need a break, this is a good time to do it. If you need like a room for a call or a car to sit in while you do this, let me know.
Here's the time. Yeah.
And you know, but nowadays some clients aren't even coming on set anymore. That's happening a lot more often. Yeah. Because I think clients are so busy too.
Everyone's busy.
And I mean, you know, it's a pressure off you when the client's not, you know, there because you're, you know, with your team.
Depending, because them being on Zoom can sometimes be a lot worse, too.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But I feel like, yes. But some of my clients don't even go on Zoom to watch it. So, I mean, you know, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and when I started, that would never happen. You know, it would never happen. No, that would not be possible.
If you're not there, there's no
out of the room. Yeah. You're either in the boat or out of the boat. Right. If you're not in the room, you're out of the boat.
And you want us to send you... I remember it was the CEO, though, and we were all so heartbroken because he wanted to micromanage us that much, but we had to send him, like, cuts and pictures of the shots for his input, and we're all the way in the middle of Utah, and everyone all the way down to their hair and makeup stylist. Everyone's just livid because it just totally interrupts the process.
Yeah, you're just like sitting there waiting for somebody to make a
decision from miles from across the country.
Yeah. The best thing is when you shoot somewhere that has no
service.
You're out in like the woods or something.
Yes.
Or like, and that's another thing we do too, right? When we were shooting remote so much because of COVID, we'd have to like send folks like in the jungle or in the woods or whatever to like, you know, see if we can get Wi-Fi reception to like see what's happening. And you're like, oh, I don't know. There's no Wi-Fi here.
Yeah. Sorry, I can't help you.
Yeah. But, you know, and it is interesting because, you know, in the beginning of my career, there was a lot of hand-holding with clients and explaining everything. And I feel like almost now there's like, they're just so busy. They just are overworked and have 1,000 things. And the shoot is like one of a billion things that, you know, you can explain the steps, but they might not even want to know. They're like, it's just fine. You know, you just do it.
Right.
Like, and that's another thing with the producer. It's like sometimes people don't know what a producer does or even acknowledge her as a producer until something goes wrong.
Yeah. Oh, it's always if something goes wrong.
Only if something goes wrong.
It's always production's fault.
Yeah.
Like,
it's always like, it rained.
Yeah.
How did you not plan for the rain?
How did you not plan for that?
Yes.
Or there's construction outside, and it's
oh, God.
How did you not know? I'm sorry, I do not know Con Ed's schedule. My apologies.
No, it's so funny. But at the same time, our jobs are so silly. Like I once filmed with a cow, and we were filming in a building. Like so, like part of us deciding what building we could film in was what had a freight elevator that could hold a cow that could be brought up.
Those details matter.
Like
I've definitely taken measurements of freight elevators before.
Yeah.
It's whether there's equipment.
Yeah, there's equipment to get in. The couch is not going to fit. The so-and-so. Like you're like the randomest things that you're like, if we didn't figure this particular thing out, then we would have been so like behind the eight ball.
Yeah, she would have been a disaster.
Yeah.
So what's the biggest challenge? Like, tell us a story. What's like one of the biggest challenges you've had to overcome in a production, minus the cow?
Yeah. So I was filming something with a celebrity for a very big project. and we had like 5 spots. And I have another one too, actually. They all involve the celebrities, the hard ones. So we had like one day we were filming one major celebrity, the next day we were filming another major celebrity, the next day we were filming another one. And so we had to like, organize everything, and it's a big job. And so day 1, we get to set, big celebrity, we're paying them over $1 million. And I walk into set and I'm told, so his private plane that we paid for hasn't left the runway yet. And he should have been here an hour ago. And so we're like, okay. And then it's like, yeah, there's mechanical problems on the plane. So we're like, okay. And then it's like, so what do? We have 2 other celebrities there waiting for this celebrity to be there. And these 2 celebrities can only be there that one day.
Right.
And the next day I can't push into because I have another big celebrity coming in that we worked on. So what we had to do, we had to scramble right then and there. I had a VFX supervisor on set for other parts of it. And I said, so how do we film this commercial with this talent not here? And film half of it with the talent that is here. Because we're going to have to film the celebrity another time.
Wherever they are.
And figure it out.
Yeah.
So luckily, the VFX supervisor was there. And this is part of the talking to people that know more than you do. And so what we decided to do was to film the whole commercial with the 2 celebrities that were there and like a stand-in for the other celebrity that couldn't be there. And then we had to go back to New York and build sets that matched the location that we filmed in this house.
Wow.
And refilm it all again with this celebrity.
Wow.
And the reason we couldn't go back to the house that we were filming in LA was because this celebrity was committed on another project that they couldn't.
On the East Coast.
Yes, on the East Coast. So they could not go back. So, and then I had to talk to the celebrity's agent, and they said, okay, he'll do it if you promise that you can make it look good and not hokey. Can you promise that it's going to look really good and not hokey? And I was like, yes, that's my job to make it look really good and not hokey. So, I mean, unfortunately, it did cost the client more money because we had to add a shoot day. And
build sets.
And build really expensive sets in like 4 different locations, and then do all the VFX. There was one shot that somebody passes something off to the other celebrity. So that was like a really hard shot because it's like them interacting. They're not in the same space. But we did it.
Pulled it off.
And we pulled it off. And, I almost love when the production problems happen when you're on set versus like before, because when they happen before, there's so much like hypothetical or like, we could try this, or we could try this, or we could try this. And when you're on set together, you're like, okay, all the minds are here.
Together, yes.
All the minds are here, so let's do it. Another time I filmed something very early on in my career, was assisting on a job with an athlete. And it was Ben Roethlisberger was the athlete. And we landed and we were going to shoot, and it was very big. It was months and months and months. It's a long time ago, so production was like, took a very long time to plan. Right. And we got a call that Ben Roethlisberger had been in a serious motorcycle accident, and he was in the intensive care unit.
Wow.
So for that one, it was a little bit of like, let's scramble, how can we rewrite the board? So we rewrote the board to kind of be more of a group commercial than just like Ben and his mother.
By himself. So was Ben written out of the commercial?
Ben was written out, and he was in ICU.
Because you couldn't.
He was.
There was
they
nothing
didn't
you could
even
do.
know if he was gonna ever play football again at that time. So
and the timeline was the timeline.
The timeline was the timeline.
Right.
We rejiggered a few things, and we ended up shooting as a part of the other commercial they were going to shoot the next day, and then we rejiggered and we shot the commercial that was going to be Ben's another day. So a lot of it's about talent. Travel stuff. COVID was very hard to film.
Oh gosh,
COVID was hard because I filmed something for a liquor brand, and you couldn't have more than like 12 people in a room, and it was supposed to be parties.
Oh wow!
And it's supposed to be like rock on parties, and I was like, okay, so let's see how we do this. Could we? And I kind of approached it as a VFX right from the beginning, because I would call production companies and say, well, legal, like we can't have more than 12 people in the room, and this is a party that's 50, so we're gonna have to shoot plates of people.
That's exactly where my mind went to. Yeah.
And make it feel like that. But so that was like kind of like the solve wasn't, you know, but even going in, you have to figure that out so that you're not like only going with the production company, and then they're like, well, we can only 12 people. You're like, well, this doesn't seem like a rockin' party with 12
you've
people.
got to have, so you as the agency producer, you have to have a game plan before you start reaching out. And you're kind of still, even when things happen with talent or client changes, you're kind of like the leader in thinking through the solutions. Obviously, you lean into your collaborators and you're always going to ask for insight, but you're like the true quarterback.
You are the person that gets to see the job in a way that no one else does.
Right.
Because I am there to represent my client. I'm there to represent my creatives. I'm there to represent my director. I'm there to represent the brand. I'm there to represent the account person. But like, I'm really there to really just champion the project. And
through the end.
And sometimes when you're there really just in service of making a great piece of film, you know, you kind of bump into a few things with people along the way. You know what I mean? Because they might not see how you're going to do it, or they're worried about the money, or the client doesn't understand exactly what, you know, the vision is. So sometimes like it's hard because as a producer, you want to be a people pleaser because you want to be happy, but sometimes you need to just like see the job from an angle that not everybody's seeing it from.
Yeah, from aerial view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I always have like if this happens, then we could try this, or we could try this. Like I always try to have like a backup in my head for the things that possibly could go wrong that I don't even tell people about, that I just like
keep it in your back pocket.
Yeah. That I just like know that this would be how I would do it. If
worst case scenario.
Yeah.
If there was one thing that you were told or learned before back in the day, what would that one thing be? Like, I wish I knew.
I wish I knew that it is a lot of your job is just relationships. And I wish I knew, you know, in my like spunky 20s and stuff, when something went wrong, you know, to maybe just take a deep breath, you know what I mean? And kind of just know that like you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
And, you know, that even if you maybe know a better way to do things, you sometimes just got to read the room.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that's very important because I think we're a very outspoken, you know, group of people.
Yeah.
And for me personally, as you can hear as I chatter away in this chat we're having, I think in my earlier career, and you know, even now still, I think it's just important to listen to all the needs and the perspectives.
Yeah.
And I think that you need to take all those in before you have a recommendation about how to move forward.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, because it's kind of like, I grew up thinking like, if you do a good job, then everybody's just going to, you know, be so impressed with you. But I don't know if that's always true. I think so much of it's interpersonal communication and skills like that. And I think that that's very important for people to know going in that you're going to be good at your job, but sometimes, you know, that's not all you need to be. For sure.
I would say those are one of the things for me as well. It's definitely about how you make people feel.
Yeah.
When they're collaborating with you, when they're creating with you, having a sense of empathy, although you're also the main person cracking the whip and keeping everyone together, and that delicate balance of that. So I definitely agree. And that takes learning and experience. But as, again, someone coming in now, if they're listening or tuning in, it's definitely something to pay attention to. Especially in those hard times, in those challenging moments. It requires a certain level of patience.
Yeah, because we're artists, but we're also working like with corporate companies. Yeah. And so, you know, not everybody's way of communicating is the same. And I think that I was, in the beginning, just because I'm a New Yorker and I was an artist, and, I think I was a little naive to that.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Last thing for me. Going to LA as a New Yorker to produce, I was a fucking riot. And a location manager had to take me under his wing and say, like, listen, young lady, I really respect that you are even producing this commercial, but you are not going to get far here with this attitude and these expectations. And it was a level set. It was a real, I appreciated that. It was like a real conversation that I needed because they moved like molasses.
Yeah.
And at that time, I didn't know that that was just how things were on the West Coast and just kind of like a way of life. I didn't know. I was from New York. I've only produced in New York and the DMV. But I appreciated him being willing. His name's Dale. We haven't worked with him.
We love you, Dale.
We love Dale. But he was like, if you're going to come over here and start producing, again, it goes back to being empathetic and just understanding other perspectives, reading the room. If everyone is moving with a sense of, I'm just going to say slowness, but, moving at their own pace, and that probably is the reality of your set and the people that you're collaborating with on this side of the world.
And same thing for shooting internationally, it's like internationally they do things different. I mean, I shot in countries where they don't even break for lunch or dinner. They just do like, walking lunches and just like, and they might move a little slower, than the New York crew, but they're also not breaking for dinner and they're not going to stop shooting until the job's done versus like, some crews here, they're on a time and, that's it.
It's done. So, you start getting penalties, meal penalties, all types of stuff.
Yeah.
I remember Paris. We were working on a project with Frank. And, when you work with artists and celebrities, there's no such thing as no, or there's no such thing as impossible. So I also had to learn that no and impossible is prominent in the French vocabulary as well. And how to navigate those conversations, to get them to see the other side and understand, like, American artists don't take no for an answer at all. And so this is how we're going to have to explore, maybe it's no today. Does that mean like tomorrow we're going to wake up and find some other solutions? But learning through experience, ultimately.
Yeah. And that's the craziest thing about our job. It really is like a trade job or like a craftsman job or apprentice job. Like you can't learn to produce until you're doing it. It's kind of like no one can tell you how to swim until you start swimming. Yeah. Like it is something that's like every day is different. Every day is a new challenge. Every day is a different problem. So there's no handbook. I mean, there's, process things we can discuss and do that. But when you're in it, when you're in the weeds and something happens, it's like, we're just going to, pull from all your knowledge and all the people around you and just get it done and figure it out.
And that's the magic of it. That's why we love it.
We do love it. Yeah. We're such nerds.
We are. And I'll probably produce. I used to say I wanted to be a location manager, like a little old lady location manager with my library, and go and just still, even though I'm not in the field, like I'd still have productions happening in different places.
Next life.
In the mix. Yeah. But Chance, this is awesome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And thanks for letting me talk about something I love.
Yes, thank you for sharing with us. And thank you guys for joining us for another episode of OK Copy. We'll see you soon.